you look at the two samples, and this was done shortly after, this is how the design was supposed to be. You look at, this is the panel that was put on the side of the wall. This is just obviously a replication of this. This is something that the Transportation Public Works used to talk about this with the county board. The original design on each of those was to have 4 circular sections in here that were actually built into the concrete. They had rebar around it, actually inside the concrete, and then there was going to be a post inserted that would fit inside the top of the parapet as it came down. That's the design. There were 4 across on each parapet panel. If you look down on the parapet, the wall itself, you would see 4 across there. That's the way this was originally designed. What they've concluded, and what we saw at the time, that they reaffirmed it, is essentially the panels were put on like this without the piece inside there. And then they put, as I just alluded to, a piece like this. They drilled, and I'm going to talk about the drilling in just a minute, drilled through the facade panel, in some cases into the parapet wall, in other cases not, which is remarkable. But without a concise and completely similar measurement. They drilled in, and then they pounded this in all the way through into the parapet wall below. What you'll see and you'll hear about in the description in this report is that this was done without any sign, any evidence that we're aware of a change order. Clearly not done the way it was originally designed to be done. And one of the concerns they raised is not only was it done inconsistently, there's some real concern, which I'm going to read about next, that caused some cracking even all the way back to the early 1990s when they did this. Again, reading from the report. It was also observed that the concrete surrounding the inserted pins of the failed panel on the outside vertical face near the top of the parapet wall had spalled outward, eliminating structural anchorage of the rebar pins. The top exterior face of the parapet at the failure location did not contain steel reinforcement. The required reinforcing had been in place in the parapet wall in positions that did not confine the formation of the spall fracture plane. What they mean by that is, if you look at the panel that came off, instead of having, as you would have on the way it was designed, the reinforcement in the center here, these pieces were ultimately pushed into the wall below, the parapet. And at the time, it appears from the structural testing that they did on the other parapet walls, that when they pounded that in, it seems very likely that caused cracking at the time of installation. And you can actually see, and you've seen in the pictures since then, that the wall, the parapet wall that was still in place, was actually pulled away. So at whatever point, whatever moment caused the facade panel to slip away, the fact that there was no reinforcement in here definitely had an impact in terms of not keeping that from falling back. Again, I also talked about another section talking about pin length and embedment. The pin lengths as measured by the ultrasonic testing that they used varied from 7.5 to 17.75 inches. And the pin insertion depth into the parapet measured from its top surface varied from 3/4 inch to 10 inch. Now, the amazing thing about this, and I'm going to read this quote out. Quote, several pins were observed to terminate at the bottom of the precast panel with no embedment into the parapet at all. What that means is they pounded this in several cases, but in their testing, they found it didn't even go into the parapet wall below. So in some cases, it just went in and stopped before it got through the facade panel that was there. We also talked about the pin placement as measured from the interior face of the parapet to the edge of the pin varied from 2.5 inches to 6 inches. Again, all these things being important because, again, if you go back to the original design, they were consistent. In every single case, if you look at the parapet wall, there were 4 holes. They were filled with reinforcement. They were built that way, and they were built for a purpose to make sure that they were fully reinforced, and they were built so that they were exactly the same distance away from the front of the parapet wall. What they found here was it varied from one panel piece to the next. In addition, as I mentioned, the parapet cracking and reinforcement position, they noted that cracking on the parapet surface was identified in 76 of the 296 locations they looked at by video scope. So again, where you had these pieces pounded in, they looked at 296 of them, and 76 times, 76 of those cases, they found that there was actually cracking on the parapet surface below. So the pounding in 76 of those cases caused some form of cracking. So overall, in conclusions, they did a total of 296 connections were evaluated throughout the parking structure. Of the 296, 4 connections, or fewer than 1.5% of the total, complied with the shop drawings or the upper structural connection. Based on the project documentation provided by Inspect and measurements and inspections made by the CTL group, the remaining connections, 98.5% of them, did not comply with the project drawings or any known authorized change to the contract documents. I think it's pretty clear. Again, that's 98% and they looked at every part of this structure. 98.5% of them did not comply with the way it was originally designed to be installed.